You know what I'm here to say to you, right?
I do not.
I'm half reptilian.
You're what?
As a shaman, I have the ability to make things happen to your body that I want to happen.
You do?
Spirits shock his body with uncontrollable laughter at 10,000.
Okay, we're shocking their bodies.
Rise, primal energy.
Shock his body with uncontrollable laughter at 20,000. 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000.
How high can it go, you ask? Well, there's always another level.
I did cross the line. I should have never sucked this.
This is Durek Verrett, or Shaman Durek to his Hollywood clients. He's a self-proclaimed sixth-generation, previously third-generation, shaman from Sacramento, California. He's married to a Norwegian princess. He counts Gwyneth Paltrow among his closest friends and clients, and he says he's a wizard with magical powers who can turn atoms and reverse aging. Whatever the hell that means. Now, if you're thinking that this guy sounds like some sort of hybrid species of space lizard from the Andromeda Galaxy, well, that's probably because you've seen him on Instagram.
And then the other is I'm Andromedian. I'm from Andromeda.
Visitors essentially mated with Earth women.
Now, I've spent a lot of time covering people who sell wellness products that don't work, supplement companies, breathwork gurus, and usually the story is pretty simple. Someone finds a gap in the market, fills it with something that sounds scientific, and then makes a lot of money. Durek Verrett takes that pattern to a whole nother level. Because Verrett isn't just making suckers out of Hollywood. He's a modern remake of the spiritual grift that inhabited the Reagan White House.
Nancy Reagan said, as she said before, that she turned to California astrologer Joan Quigley after her husband was shot and wounded by John Hinckley, that she heard Quigley had forecasted.
I also affected definitely the relationship between the superpowers because of my reading of Gorbachev's horoscope.
The question isn't whether he is a fraud. It's how a fraud becomes a key advisor to the most influential people in the world. Telling this story is a lot like watching a train wreck in slow motion, so buckle up. Today's episode is sponsored by Hensen Shaving. When I was a young man, I saw shaving as a rite of passage. A morning ritual, which would be with me to the end of my days. But there's a real disconnect between the razor of my dreams and this cheap, disposable plastic gear with its absolutely sci-fi number of blades. And here's the thing that I learned. When a blade meets the hair, it creates this serious resistance. If it isn't held rigidly, it vibrates. Machinists, they call this chatter. And that chatter is what causes the razor burn that you get. Every pivot, every spring, that chatter makes it worse. Hensen is an aerospace shop in Canada. They spent 2 decades making components for satellites and even the ExoMars rover. These parts can't exactly go back home for repairs. And a couple of their machinists, they looked at a razor and they saw a rigidity problem. So they built one that clamps the blade at a fixed 30-degree angle with almost no overhang. They use standard double-edged blades. Those are 10 cents each, and you don't have to buy them from Hensen. And I've been using this now for 4 months, and something about it just feels right, which is why I reach for this every morning. So if you want something a little less plastic and a little more design forward, go to hensenshaving.com/Scott Carney or use the code Scott Carney at checkout for 2 years of razors for free, the purchase of the actual razor. And with that, let's go back to the episode. A few weeks ago, Katie Ray, who has a criminally underread Substack called The Healing Delusion, reached out to me saying that I absolutely had to do a report on Durek. She knew a lot more about him than I did, so we decided to write this together.
So, this story kind of took over my life for a little bit, and it's not just because it was splashed across the pages of Vanity Fair, but also because he had his own Netflix show where he married, and I cannot believe this is true, the Princess of Norway.
The couple who tied the knot in August 2024 are featured in Netflix's recent documentary Rebel Royals, An Unlikely Love Story.
I wanted to find out how such an obvious fraudster convinced legitimately important people that he was their spiritual salvation, despite being a big bag of red flags.
The first thing you need to know about Durek Verrett is that his origin story has never been the same twice. In some versions, he grew up wealthy. In another, he scraped by. And he is always sure to note that just about everyone in his family is absolutely a shaman.
My great-grandmother was a medicine woman by the name of Maman. She was from Africa. And my grandfather was a Native American Blackfoot Indian.
My great-great-great-great-grandfather and then grandmother, from generations down, they were shamans in the tribe, in the Kumi tribe and the Yoruba tribe. And then it was just passed down from one generation to the next until it got to me.
It's too bad that his mother says that this is all hogwash. She has publicly said multiple times that there is not a single shaman in the family tree. And in true shamanic form, Durek claims that the press just got to her, and then he threatened to sue his mother to keep her quiet. What we do know is that in 1991, when he was 16, he was convicted of felony arson and trespassing, and after his release in 1993, according to several news reports, he was arrested 3 more times, including for domestic violence. And perhaps because none of this is a great character reference, he has yet another squirrely origin story for his chosen status.
When I was 29 years old, I woke up one morning and my kidneys gave out.
The exact details are fuzzy. Sometimes this happened in the jungles of Belize, and others it's in Los Angeles. But the end result is a heroic journey from death to resurrection.
I suffocated to death and died.
In some versions of the story, he was in a coma for months and even on life support.
After I came out of my coma, after months, I was told I was never going to walk again and that I was paralyzed. And I had my ancestors were there in the room with me in spirit form, and they told me that I could heal my legs, but it was going to take me some time, that I had to be comfortable being in a wheelchair.
And finally comes the return with special powers.
I already identified with being Shaman Durek, but it became more clear when I came back from dying.
Do you know what else magical deity figures can do? Heal themselves, naturally. According to him, he healed himself with the use of spirits that surrounded him, brought him back from the brink of death.
Until my brain recovered. And then I did it to my body. And the only thing that didn't recover, even my liver came back, was my kidneys. And my kidneys, I asked them and they said, "But you're a wounded healer. Something has to be sacrificed."
Unfortunately, these powers, or let's be honest, the acute hospital care that he was receiving, failed to cure his actual renal failure, which is the only provable medical condition that he has. After that, he needed to be on dialysis for about 8 years until he crowdfunded $100,000 for kidney surgery and then received a transplant from his sister Angelina, an organ that his body then rejected just a few years later. Okay, so while the healing powers turned out to be bunk, he still took a page from the Guru playbook and began to travel the world, collecting spiritual insights that he could bring back to, well, his paying customers.
I moved to Israel, learned how to speak Hebrew. I moved to Palestine, then I went to Egypt, and then I was in Turkey, and then getting into Tibetanism and getting into Buddhism and getting the Gohanzen and chanting Nameho Renge Kyo. And that's how Shaman Durek came about.
Okay, so you've heard the word shaman here quite a bit so far, and you might be asking yourself, what the hell is a shaman anyway? It seems like these days anyone who does an ayahuasca ceremony and owns a few feathers can call themselves one, which is a fair observation because there's obviously no licensing board for shamans after all. But I do have a little insight into shamanic stuff because before I was a journalist, I was a medical anthropologist, and I've met with shamans both in Tibet and Peru. And the term actually derives from the Tungusic languages in Siberia and translates roughly to one who sees. And it's come to describe similarities in diverse religious traditions the world over that correspond to holy individuals who can access something like a spirit world. And perhaps the main problem with the term is that it's just so broad that anyone can take advantage of it for their own purposes, while claiming some vague, usually culturally appropriated mystical identity. And in Verrett's case, he boasts about his shamanic superpowers.
I have the ability that I can go through your psyche right now and figure out what you're thinking. I can listen to your thoughts right now.
What Durek teaches is that he's able to look at how fast you blink, or how you stand, or the way you talk, or the way you breathe, or the way you shake your arms while doing YouTube videos, which allows him to give a full picture of your health through his spiritual senses.
Once we understand that, then we can start to make sense of how you got sick and why you're sick and why the continuous decline of your health is continuing.
Now, of course, relying on a spiritual explanation is a great way to deny the existence of material explanations that diseases could start from, like bacteria or viruses or genetic defects. It also conveniently makes him, and only him, the route to someone's personal healing. All he needs to do is convince someone else, someone famous, to buy his grift, and then he's off to the races. And here's what he figured out, and I mean he really figured it out with precision, is that in the wellness industry, credibility is a product. Like any product, if you know how to source it cheaply and mark it up, well, then you can get very, very rich. And the first person to sell him that credibility was Gwyneth Paltrow. Paltrow features him on the Goop website. It's her health and pseudoscience wellness platform. And at this point, it's still one of the most powerful endorsement engines in the entire wellness industry. And Paltrow calls Durek her, quote, light in shining armor. The celebrity cosign was magic in its own right. His client list exploded at the speed of the internet. He was soon ministering to the likes of Selma Blair and Chris Pine and James Vanderbeek and Rosario Dawson and Dave Asprey and Nina Dobrev. And once you have a client list like that, nobody goes back to check your credentials. That proximity to fame allowed him to sell access to ordinary spiritual seekers at really high markups.
Dealing with stress? Do this shamanic hack. Hands face up. Uba, 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 uba. And your stress will be gone.
His core product is a private session that runs up to $2,000, in which he connects to your spirit to alleviate addiction, depression, anxiety, physical illness, really whatever you want. And I just want to show you what that looks like in practice.
Let's go ahead and create a pulse line into his body. Good. Spirits, go ahead and pull the energy out of his system and yawn it out of his mouth. Good. And spirits, access the energy grids inside of his body, where he's holding it on, create a spiral inside of his stomach. And spirits, go ahead and cough the poison out of his system that's affecting his stomach. Good. Spirits, increase it, cough him even deeper, spirits, and pull the poison all the way out of his rib cage, medial to his spine, and release him even more, cough him stronger, spirits. That's it. Keep cleaning him, cough him even stronger. Good. Spirits, move the toes of his feet, move the muscles inside of his legs, accelerate the energies inside of his body, increase it. Good. Open up the energy axis in the back of his spine, in his C2 vertebrae, run it down to his thoracic, and cough that poison out of his system as well.
I mean, to me, this looks like bang standard stage hypnosis. You know, the kind of events where a hypnotist gets ordinary people to fall asleep or dance like a chicken in front of all their friends. As the hypnotist Ben Kale explains,
the hypnotic trance is nothing more than a person holding the belief that he or she is being controlled by the hypnotist. If that's true, it means that hypnosis is just a persuasion process, and that the reason that these hypnotic inductions are working is because they look convincing enough to work.
Control can look spooky, but it really is that simple. And Durek's grift starts long before someone starts shaking the bad spirits out of their toes. It starts all the way back to the time when he starts convincing people of his various origin stories. Once someone accepts one crazy, contradictory idea, it's ever easier for him to convince them that the next one is also true, until his clients literally pay him to shake their bodies in private sessions. And what is a more fertile ground for people falling for that shiny veneer of confidence than Hollywood? Well, it turns out that there is one other place, and it's not one that you would expect. It's the Norwegian royal family. In 2022, Durek Verrett got engaged to Princess Martha Louise of of Norway, which is an outcome about as bizarre as I can think of. It's like a complete transmogrification from the world of celebrities into the landed, hereditary titles passed down to us by the feudal system. It carries centuries of European symbolic authority, which also meant that it involved the spectacle of a royal wedding.
I would like a royal wedding because I'm going to be a royal.
Is this story getting insane enough for you? To reflect on how far we've come, a convicted arsonist who invented the idea that he came from a line of shamans failed to heal his own chronic illness, only to get sucked up into the Hollywood glitterati and ultimately gets married to a freaking Norwegian princess. Like, seriously, WTF? Is he living the American dream, or is he the epitome of an American flim-flam nightmare? Anyway, in August 2024, they married at a fjord in Geiranger, in a ceremony that lasted 4 days. They sold the photo rights to Hello magazine, and a Netflix documentary crew filmed the whole thing.
Marrying into the royal family, it's just very, very surreal.
And if you're wondering how someone of European royal ancestry ended up with a shaman from LA, well, they met through the predictable woo-woo circles. Martha Louise was always sort of a weirdo in the Norwegian family line, though perhaps not as much of a black sheep as the actual crown princess. I think her name's Verrett, who traded dirty stories with Jeffrey Epstein, famously writing to him that, quote, "Paris is good for infidelity. Scandinavians make better wife material," which is kind of gross. And there's also the matter of the Crown Princess's son, Marius Borg Høiby, who was found guilty of 2 counts of rape and 32 other offenses and sentenced to 4 years in prison. Okay, now that I'm saying that all out loud, Martha Louise seems actually kind of tame when it comes to Norwegian royalty. All she did was open up an alternative therapy school that teaches clairvoyance and how to communicate with angels and the dead. And I guess that's the better kind of black sheep when you've got a family like that. Anyway, Norwegian royals are obviously newsworthy, and it's predictable that Durek faced a lot of bad press, mostly in Norway, which is why you never heard about any of it. Anyway, the princess called it all a smear campaign and a vendetta against him and her. And the war waged online with suspicious Wikipedia page edits and allegations of bot farming and fake followers, and all of the stuff that's pretty much par for the course for modern crisis PR. And still, the Norwegian press calls him Rasputin.
It's easy to call someone a fraud when they make a certain amount of money and they live a certain life.
Anyway, the upshot of all of this is that Martha ultimately relinquished her remaining royal duties and maybe her title too. I'm actually not sure about that. But she wanted to focus on her alternative medicine business with Durek.
Obviously, there have been comparisons with Prince Harry and Meghan.
My fiancé, Shaman Durek, and the Norwegian people, I guess, and everybody has decided that it's best for me to step down.
So this is Norway's version of the whole Meghan Markle situation, but it is not quite the whole story. Let's talk a little bit about his relationship history, because it's just as colorful as his shamanic ascendancy. Here are the highlights. In 2005, he entered a sham marriage with a Czech woman named Zaneta Marzlakova. When she filed for divorce 3 years later, he reported her to immigration authorities as an illegal resident, claiming that she used him to obtain a green card. Getting your ex-wife deported is some pretty cold stuff. Anyway, before Martha, Durek had also been in an 8-year-long relationship with a man named Hank Greenberg, who he met in a support group for gay men. And this doesn't shock me at all. The first time I saw a picture of Durek, I assumed he was gay, and he of course says that he identifies as gay, and for years he imagined that he would never end up with anyone but a man.
When I first met him, I was like, oh, yeah, he's gay. Like, he has a lot of personality.
But then he met Martha, and everything just changed. Now they describe their love as genderless, and he identifies himself as bisexual.
They call it bisexual, I call it soul sexual. I'm not letting people name me names.
I love that. But what do you think? Maybe he just saw an opportunity when it presented itself. Either way, his spiritual grifting has grown to positively royal levels. During the COVID epidemic, of course, he contracted the virus while visiting Norway and was hospitalized and then refused medical treatment and went home. Then he claims that he healed himself using this weird medallion that he calls a spirit optimizer that he sells on his website for $222, which I guess that price is some sort of like spiritual angel number thing. And what is the spirit optimizer, you ask? Well, it's quite a load of nonsense, but I figured that you will enjoy this clip of him describing how it works.
So right now, the SO is communicating to his mind, emotions, and body all the places where he's been holding trauma and releasing it through, and also pulling it from the part of him that feels like he has to hold on to it. So now I'm going to say SO, increase it, and any resistance he has in letting go of the trauma, release it out of his mouth through sounds or deep breath, deep yawn or deep cough or continuous swallow. And as you can hear the groaning coming out.
Did any of that make sense to you? Well, you and me both. Anyway, in his book, and of course he has a book, it's called Spirit Hacking, he says that chemotherapy is a financial scam run by doctors and that casual sex leaves subterranean spirit imprints inside women's vaginas, for which he sells a cleaning exercise. Maybe it looks like a vagina egg. He believes that cancer reflects emotional or spiritual imbalances, but children get cancer because they don't want to be here anymore. Of course, all of this is framed in like wellness woo-woo language, that with him helping people or rescuing them from their illness, every claim is framed in spiritual terms. There's spirits, there's energy frequencies, there's aliens, there's lizard people, rather than medical ones, giving him just enough wiggle room to dodge the medical authorities. Not that any of them are watching under Maha anyway. It feels like we live in a world where any spiritual grift, as long as you can say it with a discount code on the internet, is good to go. Which brings us to the part of the story where we have to up the ante a little bit. So let's talk about the sexual assault allegations. In October 2024, a Norwegian magazine called, I'm going to mispronounce this, it's Seoghor, published an account that Verrett had inappropriately touched a client's genitals without consent during a session. And a former close friend of him, we'll call him Eric, subsequently released voicemails in which Verrett straight up said that he crossed a line.
I have no problem to say that I've crossed the line and made mistakes. Eric, I did cross the line one time with, I did. And it was a mistake, and I'm aware of that mistake. And I did cross the line when he pulled out his I should have never sucked his
Yeah, that's quite a mistake, which he explains this way.
And he also brought it on when he pulled out his in the sessions. And yes, probably it wasn't the best time, but it was at the end of the session when he was getting his clothes on.
The most amazing part of having actual recordings of these voicemails is his spokesperson's explanation that Durek, quote, often draws energy through the lymphatic system in areas around the armpits and groin, and that because his work involves touch, clients sign a legal document consenting to genital contact as, quote, determined by him.
Famous actress came in and basically while I was doing a session with her tried to have with me and pulled her. She didn't have any panties on. And then another actress tried to do that to me. And then another guy I had a session with, and I was working on his stomach, and he got a hard on. And then he told his wife, and his wife made a big deal about it to my team. And that's the reason why my family and they were all freaked out, because those things were happening. And that's why we put a clause.
The waiver also gives Durek the right to terminate the session if the client, I'm just going to quote this, tries to kiss or touch him, fondle yourself, or get undressed, or try undressing him, or attempt to have intercourse or oral sex with him, or sex with yourself, or threaten him in any way. Okay, so as a general rule, if your spiritual guide asks you to sign a contract that mentions any of these things before a ceremony, it's probably a good idea to get a different guru. I mean, this is just as bad as the contract that Brian Johnson gets his employees to sign so that he can sexually harass them during the workday. Which I think brings us up to the present. Shaman Durek, or maybe you can call him Prince Durek, is still teaching shamanic courses to anyone who wants to sign up on his website. And he's still trying to cure his kidney failure by any means possible, a situation also covered in his Rebel Royals Netflix special.
I happen to be a wounded shaman, so it's not pleasant, but I deal with it.
Not pleasant at all.
Now I'm back on dialysis, And it's, it's been quite an adventure, I'd say, being a wounded healer, because the act of it's so easy for you to want to complain and be like, oh, my life sucks. I can't believe I have to be stuck on a machine for 3 days a week and wait to see if someone will come and offer me a kidney and all of these different things. And do you ask people to give you a kidney, or do you see if someone sees the situation you're in and says, hey, I want to offer you a kidney? But you can't focus on that being the total end all be all, because I am here to serve humanity.
I'm sure that if anyone in the human race wants to help this guy out with a spare organ, he would be happy to offer you his personal healing experience to make you whole again.
More energy is constantly coming into your body right now.
And that is all I have to say about Shaman Durek right now. Thanks so much for tuning to this ridiculously involved video about Hollywood and Norway's very special spiritual grifter. And many thanks to Katie Ray, who has an amazing newsletter called The Healing Delusion.
I had a lot of fun working on this story, and right now I'm writing about different wellness grifters, and I'd love for you to join me.
You should sign up for it right now. Also, since you're already over there, you can also support my work by signing up for my Substack newsletter and get early access to my videos before they go public here on YouTube. And if you're looking for more videos of other spiritual grifters that I've looked at, you might also like this video I did on Wim Hof, an OG ice bath guru who I once knew far too well. From Foxtopus Inc. in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney Investigates.